Recording. Okay, so welcome to this presentation. Those of you who are either watching live or watching the recording, this is called Healthy, Happy Holidays, Finding Balance and Joy, Tips for Managing Stress, Food, and Self-Care this season. So, why did I decide to do this topic right now? It should be pretty obvious that, as much as a lot of us really love the holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever other kinds of holidays you celebrate during the months of November and December, they can be a really great time of year. I know for me, they're some of my favorite times of the year with a lot of the decor and the food and all this stuff, but it can also get really, really stressful. And for those of us that live in North America and we're in the winter season during that time, and experience a drop in temperatures, and that can have an assault on our immune system as well as if you consume too much sugar. And so, this is giving you some of the tips that I've discovered to stay healthy and hopefully, not totally stress free, but help yourself to enjoy the season and not, either get sick in the middle of it or crash and burn and get sick as soon as January 1st arrives. So, with no further ado, let's get started looking at a little bit of this. So, a little bit about this about me. Some of you probably know some of these things about me, some of you maybe don't. But I am the podcast host of the podcast Autoimmune Rehab Stories of Healing and Resilience. And this is where I interview people about their journeys to healing from autoimmune conditions and then also, have some solo tips. And yes, I also have Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune myself. So that was what partly triggered me starting this podcast almost 3 years ago now. So if you go back through the archives, I have a ton of episodes. I've interviewed people on almost every autoimmune condition. Well, I can't say every, but necessarily, but all of the common ones, I have lots and lots of episodes. Some of them, some conditions I have more than others, and even some doctors, medical doctors, professionals, things on different aspects of it. So, really good resource for anybody who wants to learn how to really heal from an autoimmune condition and thrive and not just survive. I'm a blogger. My blog is the same as my name, annalaurabrown.com. I'm an essential oils educator and coach and been doing that for about, gosh, I guess 14 years now. Wow, how has it been that long? I also have a day job as well, working in tech sales. Currently, I work with a company that sells a B2B platform and we market to tour operators and travel agents. And then I also am an IIN health coach. Did that, graduated from that program in 2004. Let's see, no, 2015. So I guess it's been 10 years now. Don't do single clients really all that much. Do more group and content production, all that kind of stuff. I'm also a dog lover. I have a little black schnoodle named Daisy who's a schnauzer poodle mix. She's really cute and quite a handful. She's actually not here with me at the moment because, she would disrupt the class. Anyhow, also love avocados and like to put avocados on top of everything. I'm also a really big traveler. I like to go on at least one big trip a year and ideally three or four other trips. This year was a little bit of a what I consider to be a slower trip in the sense that I went to Vegas and I went to Sicily in Italy and to the Shakespearean Festival in Cedar City, Utah, which I live in northern Utah, so that was kind of close by. And then I'm going to be in San Diego the week of New Year's. And that was it for this year, which, may sound like not like a lot to some people, but to me, that's not a whole lot, just to give you an idea of what I like to do. Okay, and Christmas is also my favorite holiday, so I really love this time of year. Okay, let's see. So why can the holidays be really hard? So these are some of the reasons why people sometimes struggle with the holidays, and hence connections to part of the reason why I'm doing this class is the pressure to be perfect. So, some people can feel like the expectation for ideal celebrations, gifts, family time, everybody wants this and that, and you have to put on that perfect face and do anything and everything for everybody. And especially if you are watching this and you have an autoimmune condition, which, like I mentioned, a lot of my audience does, yeah, that can make things even worse for you. And so, I want to start off this presentation, if you will, by giving you permission to not need to be perfect. You do the best you can, and whatever your best is, and you don't need to go overboard. Also, overcommitment. So, we're juggling work, family, social obligations, travel, whatever else it is we have going on, and that can just make things really hard and complicated. And the food and drink landscape. And this is another thing a lot of us that either have autoimmune challenges or have allergies or are following special diets can relate to. There's a lot of abundant, high calorie, indulgent options everywhere. A lot of the traditional food and drinks, so to speak, that a lot of people might be serving or that you might be tempted to eat are things that you either can't have or really probably shouldn't have to help support your health. And financial strain. So, the stress of gift giving, extra expenses, all that kind of stuff. And emotional stress. So, dealing with loneliness, grief, complicated family dynamics. And so, all of this is to say that you're not alone in feeling overwhelmed, and it's okay to feel your feelings, but to also know that you can focus more on the joy and the reason for the season, if you will, especially for those of us that are Christians, to really just focus on, what really matters more than anything else. And, do the best you can and realize that nobody's really perfect, no matter what it may look like on their social media. And, you enjoy yourself and don't get too overwhelmed. Okay, so mindful, healthy eating, mindful indulgence. So I put this in here to give you some ideas about how to stick to a healthy eating plan, but yet still indulge a little bit, still enjoy some of the things that, maybe common foods and for the holiday season, that kind of thing. So for example, the power of a pregame. So, before you go to a party, don't be afraid to eat a small healthy snack to prevent starving and to also make it so that you're just not going to overboard by overeating. You can pick your plate, so mentally choose 2 to 3 must-have holiday treats and enjoy them mindfully and don't sample everything. In other words, don't feel like you have to indulge in overeating by eating anything and everything. Obviously, again, of course, if you have allergies or food restrictions, like a lot of us, like I know I have to do gluten-free, so I can't just by default, there's going to be things at every party or dinner that I'm not going to be able to eat. But you just be a little bit careful there and balance your plate and make sure that you have half your plate with fruits and vegetables first. This is really key, and there's a lot of really good, delicious, healthy ways to enjoy fruits and vegetables, even at the holiday season. Um, like you can do things like have an actual fruit plate or a vegetable plate, but you could also do things like some different seasonal fruit smoothies would be a good option, finding different clever ways of doing like vegetable stir fries with different combinations that taste really good. Doing some kind of like sugar-free apple cider or wasel drink, that kind of thing. And making sure that you are drinking plenty of water. And I mean, this says here glass between alcoholic drinks, stay full and manage cravings. Personally, I don't drink alcohol at all and really don't advocate for drinking alcohol. And especially if you have autoimmune conditions, it turns into sugar, diabetes, things like that. Just really not great for your health. But, if, you are indulging in that or whatever, then, just make sure you're also getting plenty of water too. And mindful eating. So you want to put your fork down between bites, savor the flavors, and stop when you're comfortably full and not stuffed. So mindful eating, I find sometimes people get, it's kind of a buzzword that people throw out there and they get a little confused, but what exactly does that mean? Well, what I find mindful eating means is trying to really take time, like it says to slow down and savor your food, but to really think about, what do you really want to eat and what does your body really need and want? Not just what do your eyes want. So a good example of this would be really thinking about, okay, what am I going to choose to eat that's going to make me feel healthy and not just looking at a whole array of tons of sweets and then thinking, oh, well, those taste good, because at the end of the day, your body may not mind a little bit of a taste, but your body probably really doesn't want you to go eat 10 desserts at a party. That's just really not going to be mindful eating and you're really not going to enjoy yourself. So then you can also do some different swap examples. So things like butter or oil and baking with your applesauce, or you can use honey or maple syrup instead of sugar for a healthier boost. Speaking of which, a good example is I was just recently, I have to be really careful with dairy as well, so I can't really have, a lot of the traditional like eggnogs, and a lot of those are really full of sugar anyway. And so I was Googling around looking for some dairy-free eggnog recipes, and I actually found one that has only just a little bit of maple syrup in it, along with the eggnog that I'm going to try. And that seems, like a pretty good example of a healthier option. So then the other thing you could also do is you could either go to Pinterest and search, or you could search and find some different, Google have some blog posts. Even ask ChatGPT, that kind of thing, for some different ideas of healthier versions of some of your favorite foods. So in other words, instead of just telling yourself, oh, well, I can't have any brownies, I can't have cheesecake, I can't have this, I can't have that, figure out how to recreate some of those things using some of the healthier ingredients, or, avoiding some of the things like gluten and dairy if you are off of those, rather than just saying, oh no, I can't have any. Because there are a lot of ways to recreate them, and there are a lot of other people that have already done it, and they've written about it online about how you can do it too. Okay, so keep moving, the activity advantage. So there's a lot of things about, and I actually just wrote a blog post just now that I hit publish on right before we got on here, about creating a holiday fitness routine. And this has to do a lot with this. So you want to aim for consistency and not intensity. And like it says there, you're better off doing a short, brisk walk rather than skipping a workout entirely. And, incorporate family fun. So think about what kinds of activities, and even if it's not with a family, even if it's just solo on your own, what kinds of winter activities can you do that will get you out moving? So it's got some examples there like ice skating, sledding, going around and walking the neighborhood, looking at the lights. Maybe even you could get together with a group if you feel comfortable with this and you know your neighbors well enough, go around and get a walk in while you do some Christmas caroling, and, just different kinds of things to make sure that you stick to that routine and keep moving, and schedule it in. If your exercise isn't scheduled, you're going to have a harder time sticking to it. I know what I do is I actually have gym membership primarily for going swimming, and I schedule in at least a 1 or 2 days per week that I'm actually going to go swimming, and I usually go in the morning. First thing, I'm usually swimming at around 6 a.m., which some people find really shocking, but it works really good for me. And movement is a stress reliever. So that's the other thing. You also want to realize that you don't want to just move because you want to lose weight or because you don't want to gain weight. It also can help you feel better. It's a stress reliever. It can help you sleep better. It actually can help your immune system even. And go outside as well. So a couple of things I like to do is I like to go outside at least a little bit in the beginning of the day. So sometimes like I mentioned before, I have a dog. I'll take my dog on a walk, or in the first thing in the morning, or I'll get out and go sit outside for a few minutes, watch the sun come up. But you really need that daylight and to be outside and get that cold, cool, fresh air, and move at least 20 minutes within the first hour of waking up. And this is another one. People sometimes give me a little bit of, they're like, what? But the reality is that, yes, really, you really should get up and start moving within the first thing of getting up. And if you actually notice, I've noticed this ever since I've had my dog, but if you pay attention to what happens and what a dog does after the dog has been sleeping, whether the dog has been sleeping in your bed all night or it's been on the couch or whatever, what does a dog do when it first gets up, even if it's from a nap in the middle of the day? The dog gets up and the dog starts stretching. And the dog spends that first 2 or 3 minutes after it's gotten out of its position from its nap or from sleeping all night, walking around and stretching. And there's a reason for that. It's because that they know that that stretching makes them feel really good and really comfortable and get into a good position. And we want to follow the example of our canine friends and do the same thing. And if the weather's really bad, I've had to put that on here because I come from, like I said, from Utah, from a snowy environment. So there's, really cold. It can be blizzardy. It can be, different variations of weather. So occasionally it's just really not even going to be possible or practical to avoid slipping, things like that, to go outside and really do anything more than just breathe in a minute of air and then say, oh, that's it. Then, you can try things like a 10-minute online workout video, a dance party. I actually own Zumba and dance routine things from Nintendo Switch, and we'll use those. I have some different kinds of exercise apps. I actually have the Alter Me exercise app and Mirror, which is a whole thing in and of itself, but I really enjoy doing that. Just, there's lots of things on YouTube, whatever it is you can find to exercise indoors. So don't use the fact that the weather is bad as an excuse either. Okay, so mental wellness, stress busting strategies. So how do we avoid getting, down, not supporting our mental and emotional well-being, and just getting too stressful during stressed out during the holidays? Well, here's a couple of things that you can do to help with that. So the first one is to practice the art of no. So realizing that no is a complete sentence and it's okay to decline invitations or simplify traditions, that cause more stress than joy. So the reality is that you don't have to, and quite frankly, you can't participate in every activity that there possibly is at the holiday season. So you really want to decide where your priorities lie and focus on doing those things that bring you the most joy, that are the least stressed, and the things you just really, I don't want to say necessarily have to do, but the things you really, should do. And set realistic expectations. So, in other words, like it says, don't chase a movie perfect holiday. Focus on authentic connection and enjoyment, and realize that nobody has it perfect, even if maybe they make it look like on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever that they do. The reality is they don't. Trust me, they really don't, even if they might seem like they do. And stick to your basics. So, you want to prioritize your sleep, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, drinking water, and eating nourishing food. Schedule a me time. So, carve out small negotiable breaks for relaxation, quiet cup of tea, reading a book, and meditation. And practice gratitude and take a moment each day to note one thing you were truly grateful for. And then, of course, if you feel like you really are having big struggles, make sure that you reach out to friends and family or even professional help, get counseling, that kind of thing if you're really having legitimate problems. Don't just try to shove them under the rug and say, oh, well, if you really are legitimately having problems, make sure that you get the kind of professional help that you need. Okay, so here's a couple of things. Setting boundaries and seeking support. So this is really important. And sometimes at the holiday season, people can try to push your buttons a little bit, try to not, respect your boundaries, and you really just have to stick to it. So the first thing is obviously financial boundaries. So create a gift budget and stick to it, And depending on how much money you have for gifts, you could even consider things like homemade or experimental gifts, things like a promise of your time. Like I remember back to when I was younger and, really didn't have a whole lot of money. A lot of times my parents would get things like babysitting and chores and cooking dinner and things like that for Christmas gifts. And, even as an adult, those things still work. So, think about what you can do, get out of the box, and stick to your budget. Manage difficult family dynamics. So, if there's somebody who's challenging in your family, have an exit plan, a step away from a break, just figure out how to deal with all that kind of thing without going, letting it affect you too much. Acknowledge grief and loss. So, a lot of people have a harder time at the holidays because, maybe it's their first Christmas without grandma or their mom or whatever. And, give yourself permission to feel sad and realize you don't have to force being cheerful, but find new ways to honor them and realize that Christmas and the holiday season, New Year's, Hanukkah, whatever, should be a happy and joyful time. So try to do that, but realize that acknowledging grief and loss is okay. And ask for help. In other words, delegating different tasks. You don't have to do it alone. And I would add that you shouldn't do it all alone. So, make sure that you get help doing what needs to be done. and focus on what is meaningful, not what is mandatory. Okay, and so here is an action plan for a healthy holiday check checklist. And so these are some of the things that I would like to invite you to write down and check off what you are going to do this upcoming season for a healthy, happy holiday. So, first of all, I would like to invite you to write down three healthy habits that you're going to keep this season. So, the examples there would be things like a daily walk, water intake, sleep time. You can write down other things like limiting sugar, whatever it is that you want to focus on, and identify one tradition you will simplify or eliminate to save time and stress. So a couple examples of this could be is a lot of us go overboard when it comes to decorating Christmas trees and putting out Christmas lights and decorations and things like that. So maybe you're just going to cut back. I definitely don't recommend that you totally get rid of all your Christmas decor if that's something that you really enjoy. But, maybe simplify it. That would be an example of one thing you could simplify in. Different things like that. Plan a 15-minute period of self-care each day this week. And that 15-minute self-care, it can even mean something like just listening to classical music and journaling. It can mean doing a meditation. It doesn't have to be something fancy, but just come up with some different ideas of different things that you can do. And know that the greatest gift that you can give your loved ones is a happy and healthy you, and to actually enjoy the season, because it's not going to be much fun for you or anybody else if you're sick during the holiday season. Okay, so here again are a couple of healthy holiday snack swaps. I put this in here to try to give you some ideas, and if you want to even take a screenshot of this, you totally can. So a couple of addition of things to think about on here when it comes to creating some healthier, happier snacks. So, for example, you can see there that instead of like creamy dips that have a lot of dairy, maybe a little bit too fat, maybe you have allergy reasons, can't handle them, you can try something like hummus instead, which has high protein, Greek yogurt or dairy-free yogurt dips if you're able to do that. You can do vegetables instead of chips. I mean, you kind of get the idea, some of these things. Instead of like candies or cookies, you can do things like fruit skewers with dark chocolate, dates, or a nice, really sweet fruit that you can do nuts to make yourself feel good. You can do things like sparkling water with cranberries and fruit, or unsweetened hot tea as opposed to, the sweetened ciders and eggnogs that just have a lot of sugar, different things like that. Roasted vegetables are always really good. You kind of get the idea. You can just kind of experiment and think about what kinds of things you can swap out. Okay, so here's a couple of things to think about for a stress-free holiday morning. And I find that these can be some really good tips for whether we're referring to something like Thanksgiving as a holiday or referring to Christmas, is the night before. So the first thing, get plates, silverware, serving dishes, get everything out. And I will add, use paper utensils. I know for a lot of years that my mom especially was really picky about always wanting to use silver and other things like that. In the last couple of years, I come from a really big family. I'm the first of 8 kids, and my mom was just like, forget it. Paper, paper, paper on Thanksgiving. So, they really honestly can't think of a legitimate reason to eat on anything other than paper dishes for Thanksgiving, and really even Christmas meals too. So much easier, especially if you're a big group. Now, if there's less than 6 of you, then maybe you could think about using regular utensils. But like I said, there's more than that, which is even me and my siblings. So it just doesn't make sense for us to do that. So we definitely just use paper dishes. And think about along with the way to simplifying. And prep coffee or tea if that's the kind of thing you do. I don't drink coffee, but get anything ready that you might want to have out. Lay out clothes to choose comfortable, wrinkle-free outfits. Try to avoid, in other words, decide what you're going to wear the night before if you need to. And this is especially applicable, like if you're going to be going to any kind of like a Christmas morning or midnight mass or church service, or going to anywhere where you might want to dress up a little bit. Just kind of decide ahead of time what you're wearing, get that decision making all out of the way. and confirm roles. So if you're actually hosting, decide who's bringing what for the potlucks and assign things out. And I have to say, especially when it comes to holiday meals, I'm a big fan of potlucks. I really don't believe that one person should ever be cooking all of the food for Thanksgiving or all the food for Christmas, but make it really clear as to who is covering and handling what. And then the morning of. So here's a couple of ideas to help you slow down and savor. Don't rush to wake up. So, in other words, give yourself a little bit of time to get up and going and moving. Mindful movement before checking your phone or starting other digital tasks. Take 5 minutes to sit quietly, focus on your breath, on a feeling of gratitude. Prioritize sleep over perfection. So, in other words, if you have to let some things go, do it just to get some extra sleep, and make sure that you do eat breakfast. And ideally a healthier breakfast. So, in other words, don't just call donuts and something with a whole bunch of sugar your breakfast. Try to have something a little bit more substantial and focus on connections and not control because things are going to go wrong to some degree. Some food might get burned. You might not do as good a job. You might try a new recipe and it flops. Somebody might show up late. All different kinds of things can happen, and it really is okay. And I guess, oh, did I have this again? I guess I did. Well, I guess we're not going to talk about it again, but you get the idea. I didn't realize I had the same slide twice, but create a healthy holiday checklist. So, if you want to implement how you've learned, I've got some different URLs, different things like that on here, and we'll try to see if I can copy and paste some of these into the I'm gonna try to move. Let's see. Oh, it looks like I've got a picture covering part of that, but uh yeah, is I have a like an essential oils and coaching membership program you can learn about. And even if you qualify for a free wellness samples kit, you can check that out at essentialwellnesscircle.com. You can get on my email list at alarabrown.com, and I offer there the offer for joining my email list is a free copy of my healthy guide to healthy routines with a focus on autoimmunity, but it's really valid for almost everybody. And that's one way to make sure that you don't miss any classes. I also have the link there to my Healthy Winter mini course. And then for a limited time, so for those of you watching this until November 21st, there is an essential oil buy one get one free offer going on certain products. So one of them, for example, is you buy lavender, you get peppermint, and a couple different things like that. I have the link there, but it looks like I'm covering it up, so I'm going to have to uh, get the other link and uh, make sure that I post that with this. Anyhow, if anybody has any questions now, I'm going to stop the recording and you can ask me those questions.